The meeting room of the Galactic Council was huge, shining with gold lights and walls that seemed alive with moving colors. Every major world had a seat here, and Earth's ambassador, Daniel Ross, had come with hope. For months, rumors of war had been spreading, but the council promised this meeting would be about peace. Daniel stood at the center table, waiting for his turn to speak. He expected speeches, discussions, maybe even handshakes. Instead, one of the council clerks walked forward, holding a thin silver tablet. Without a word, it was placed in front of him. The display lit up. Daniel's eyes scanned the words. It was not a peace proposal. It was a decision, final vote. The council had agreed Earth was to be cut off from all trade, all shared technology, all protection. The silence in the room was heavy. Dozens of alien delegates avoided looking at him, some pretending to read data on their desks, others simply staring at the floor. Daniel's voice caught in his throat. This must be a mistake, he said. Nobody answered. Then as he looked around, he noticed one pair of alien eyes on him, yellow, sharp, almost glowing. The Drexery delegate, tall and thin, with scales like black glass, was staring right at him. And then, smirk. Daniel's blood ran cold. He was still speaking when the council chairperson simply announced, "The vote is complete. This meeting is adjourned." The walls dimmed. Delegates stood and left without a single handshake or explanation. Daniel stood alone in the empty chamber, clutching the tablet as if the cold metal could give him answers. Back on Earth, the news hit like a meteor strike. Cargo ships carrying food and rare minerals were turned away from alien ports. Medical supplies from friendly worlds stopped arriving. Satellite messages to allied planets went unanswered. Trade networks that had taken decades to build collapsed in hours. On the streets, people asked questions no one could answer. Why had the council betrayed Earth? What had humanity done to deserve this? In the capital, the president of Earth, Mara Ellison, sat in a secure meeting room with her top generals and intelligence chiefs. The air was tense, the table covered in glowing maps of space routes and flashing red alerts. "This is no accident," Mara said firmly. "They didn't just decide this today. This was planned. Someone wants us alone, vulnerable." One of the generals, Admiral Kean, leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. "We've been watching the outer sectors. Something's moving out there. Not human ships. Trade fleets. Warships. Big ones." She turned to the intelligence chief. "Who?" The answer came with hesitation. "We think it's the Drexery, but they've never moved this close to our territory before." The Drexery were known as ruthless mercenaries. They fought for credits, not for honor. If they were here, someone had paid them to be here. 3 days later, deep space scanners picked up strange movements near the Kuiper Belt, far beyond Neptune. At first, it looked like debris, then like asteroids. But the readings didn't match. These objects were too fast, too deliberate. Images came in, grainy, but clear enough, sleek black ships, bristling with weapons, sitting in the shadow of a frozen moon. The Kuiper Belt was supposed to be empty. Now it was hiding something dangerous. The president's voice was sharp as she spoke to her war council. "If they're here, they're not here to talk. They're here to strike." Admiral Kean nodded. "Grimly, we need to prepare our fleets. Quietly, if the council is turned against us, we can't trust anyone." But the Drexery didn't wait. 1 week after the council's betrayal, a mining station on the edge of human space went silent. When a rescue ship arrived, all it found was wreckage, floating metal, broken habitats, and no survivors. The attack was clean, precise, and left no trail. The media called it an accident. The military knew better. Late that night, Daniel Ross stood in his office, looking out at Earth's night sky. The betrayal still burned in his chest. He replayed the image in his mind, the Drexery delegate's smirk, the cold eyes that seemed to say, "We've already won." He didn't know how yet, but he swore Earth would answer. Humanity had been pushed into a corner, but they were not helpless. If the council wanted them weak, they would find out how strong humans could be when they were fighting for survival, far beyond Earth. In the black silence of space, the Drexery fleet began to move. The hunt had started, and the first target was already chosen. The black ships drifted in the Kuiper Belt like shadows waiting to strike. They made no transmissions, no lights, no signals of life. From a distance, they looked like dead metal. But inside, the Drexery war crews moved with silent precision, checking weapons, running drills, waiting for the order. On Earth, the intelligence reports came in with urgent red alerts. In the underground command center, President Mara Ellison stood beside Admiral Keon as a giant holographic map of the solar system glowed in the air. Red dots marked the Drexery fleet, and each day those dots inched closer. "They're not hiding anymore," Keon said, his voice low. "They want us to see them." The president stared at the map. "They're trying to scare us. Or they're buying time for something bigger." She turned to the intelligence chief. "Any word from the council?" The man shook his head. "No replies to our messages, not even automated ones. It's like they've shut us out completely." The government debated. Trouble came without warning. A mining station on Pluto's moon, Charon, reported strange sensor glitches. Hours later, the signal went dark. By the time a patrol ship reached it, the station was going to blown apart, its remains slowly drifting into the void. There were no survivors, no distress calls, no signs of an escape. Only melted metal and frozen airlocks. The rescue team's captain reported something unusual. "The cuts in the hull are too clean." This wasn't debris. It was deliberate and fast. Whoever did this was gone before anyone could respond. Back on Earth, Daniel Ross received the classified images in his secure office. He stared at them for a long time. The patterns of destruction were almost artistic surgical hits to vital systems. No wasted shots. The Drexery were showing there. Skill, sending a message without saying a word. Mara Ellison called an emergency meeting that night. Her words were cold and sharp. "They're testing us. First a mining station. Next it will be a colony. If we don't act, we're finished before the first battle even starts." She ordered the Black Star Protocol to begin. For most people, the name meant nothing. But to the military, it was the one plan meant for the worst-case scenario. Total war against a superior alien force. Old shipyards across the moon and Mars lit up with activity. Giant hangars opened, revealing warships that had been mothballed for decades. Some were so old they still carried battle scars from the Orion conflicts. Mechanics worked without rest, stripping away outdated systems and replacing them with the latest railguns, missile pods, and stealth armor. But the Drexar didn't give them much time. 2 human cargo ships carrying food to a Jupiter colony vanished on the same day. No wreckage was found, but deep scans picked up faint energy signatures in the area signatures matching Drexery warp drives. They weren't just attacking. They were choking Earth's lifelines. Meanwhile, out in the belt, Drexery commanders argued in their own harsh dissolves. Clicking language. Some wanted to launch the full attack now. Others believed the humans would panic and surrender without a fight. But their leader, a scarred veteran named Victor, had no patience for games. "We strike when they cannot stand. The Council paid for Earth's fall. We'll give it to them in flames." Unaware of the Drexery's exact plans, Admiral Keon focused on building the first line of defense. Patrol squadrons were sent to key points in the solar system. Civilian traffic was rerouted, and military transports began moving supplies too. Hidden bases. That still, the Drexery kept moving closer, one silent jump at a time. On the 3rd week after the Council's betrayal, Earth's long-range telescopes picked up something new to massive Drexery carriers, each the size of a small city, had joined the fleet. They were moving toward human space at full speed. The president listened to the final report that night. "We estimate they will reach Mars orbit in less than 14 days. The room was silent. Everyone knew that if the Drexery could take Mars, Earth would be next. Daniel Ross still remembered the smirk of the Drexery delegate at the council. He could almost hear the alien's voice in his head, whispering victory. But he also knew something the Drexery didn't. Humans were slow to anger, but once they were pushed past the edge, they didn't back down. As the meeting ended, the first wave of Earth's war fleet began to form in the dark between Earth and Mars. Engines hummed to life, railguns were loaded, and stealth systems activated. Somewhere in the deep cold, the Drexery fleet waited, confident. They didn't know that when humans fought for survival, they fought like nothing else in the galaxy. And soon, both sides would find out who would survive the coming storm. The night side of Earth glowed with silent lightning as storms rolled over the oceans. Above the clouds in low orbit, dozens of shipyards were awake for the first time in decades. Steel frames were being welded, armor plates slid into place, and giant engines were lowered into the backs of warships. The Black Star Protocol had begun, and with it came a change in the Iran unspoken understanding that peace was over. President Mara Ellison stood in the main command tower on the moon, watching through reinforced glass as the Titan-class dreadnought Horizon came alive. It was a monster 5 kilometers long, bristling with railgun batteries, missile silos, and heavy plasma cannons. The ship's armor shimmered black, designed to absorb radar and scatter light. "She's ready in 8 days," Admiral Kian said, standing beside her. "And so are the other 2 Titans. Once they move, nothing short of a planetary defense grid can stop them." Mara didn't look away from the ship. "Then we move them. The Drexari are coming, and we will meet them halfway." Across the solar system, preparations spread like fire. On Mars, hidden defense silos opened, revealing missiles that hadn't been touched since the last war. Civilian freighters were secretly converted into armed carriers. Every available pilot was recalled from leave, their personal lives left behind in an instant. On Jupiter's moons, refueling depots were stocked with enough antimatter to power the fleet for months. The media still didn't know the full truth. The government allowed small leaks enough to stir public anger, but not enough to cause mass panic. News screens showed images of destroyed mining stations and empty cargo docks. People demanded answers. And slowly that anger began to harden into unity. In deep space, the Drexery fleet moved closer. Their smaller raiding ships darted into human territory, vanishing before Earth's patrols could catch them. It was like fighting smoke. By the time you saw it, it was already gone. Kian had a plan. Using old war records, he mapped the Drexery's likely approach routes. "They'll want to avoid direct battle until they can hit a major target," he explained. "That means they'll head for Mars first. It's the closest colony with real value. If they take it, they'll use it as a forward base to strike Earth." The president agreed, and the order went out. Mars would be fortified at all costs. Daniel Ross, still furious from the betrayal at the council, was sent as the official liaison to the Martian Defense Command. His job was to coordinate between the political side and the military side. But as soon as he arrived, he could feel the tension in the air. Soldiers worked in silence. Engineers moved ammunition in long convoys. Everyone knew the Drexery were coming, and no one believed the first wave would be small. On the 5th day of preparations, a long-range scout drone sent back chilling footage. The Drexery fleet was larger than anyone expected. 4 carriers, dozens of destroyers, hundreds of smaller attack craft, and at the center a ship so massive it cast shadows over the others. The data readout identified it as the Victor S. Fist, the personal flagship of the Drexery warlord himself. Admiral Kian studied the images in silence. "They didn't come to scare us," he finally said. "They came to erase us." In a hidden meeting room on Mars, Ross and Kian met with the president over a secure hololink. "We can hold them," Kian said, "but not without losses. If the Titans aren't ready in time, we'll be fighting with knives against cannons." Mara's answer was firm. "You'll have the Titans. And when they arrive, I want the Drexery to know they've made the biggest mistake of their existence." As the meeting ended, Kian gave his final orders to the fleet. "We hold Mars until the last ship. The Titans will come. And when they do, we turn this war around." But the Drexery had plans of their own. In the dark between Neptune and Mars, their smaller ships began to slip past patrol lines, using stealth drives to get close without being detected. They carried no heavy weapons-only boarding teams. Their mission was simple: get inside human ships and disable them before the real battle began. On the 7th day, just before sunrise over Mars, the first alarm sounded. A human patrol frigate reported unknown contacts closing in fast. Moments later, the transmission cut off. In the control room, warning lights flared red as multiple distress signals appeared across the outer defense line. The Drexari were here. And this time, they weren't running. The first Drexari strike came before dawn over the red plains of Mars. At 4:17 local time, the outer defense grid lit up with hostile contacts. Sleek black ships burst from stealth, their engines flaring cold blue as they dove straight toward the planet. The human patrols scrambled to intercept, but the Drexari were already firing, in orbit. The Martian defense station Ares Watch was the first target. Railgun rounds tore through its shields, punching holes in its hull. Explosions rippled through the station's ring like fire racing through dry grass. Within minutes, the massive structure began to break apart, debris raining down toward the thin Martian atmosphere. Admiral Keon stood in the Mars Command Center, voice steady but sharp. Deploy the intercept wings. Bring the surface batteries online. I want every gun we have firing before they get within strike range. Across the planet, hidden silos opened and long missile launchers rose from the sands. The sky over Mars turned into a storm of vapor trails. Daniel Ross watched the battle from a reinforced viewport. Human ships were darting between the alien vessels, trading fire and bursts of light that flashed and faded in the black void. For every Drexari ship destroyed, another seemed to take its place. The aliens moved like predators, weaving through the chaos, targeting human ships with surgical precision. By 5:02, the Drexari began their next move. Dropships' fast, needle-shaped craft broke away from the main fleet and dived toward the Martian surface. Inside, Drexari soldiers, armored in obsidian plates, prepared for ground combat. Their orders were clear: disable Mars defense grid. From the inside, on the ground, alarms blared across the city of New Olympus. Civilians were rushed into underground shelters as defense mechs and infantry units moved into position. The first Drexari drop pods slammed into the outskirts, crushing buildings under their weight. The pod doors hissed open, and black armored warriors poured out, their weapons glowing with heat. The fighting was brutal. Human soldiers used every advantage of the terrain, ducking behind ridges and shattered walls, firing rail rifles into the advancing Drexari. But the aliens were relentless, pushing forward even as their numbers thinned. In orbit, Keon received a sudden report. Sir, we've captured one of their frigates intact. The image flashed onto the screen of Drexari ship, crippled but not destroyed, being dragged toward a docking bay by human tugs. Keon didn't hesitate. Get a team inside. I want answers. The boarding team moved fast, cutting through bulkheads and fighting through the narrow corridors. Inside, they found the Drexari bridge abandoned except for one officer wounded but alive. He glared at the humans, his black eyes full of hate. The team's translator went to work, but the alien refused to speak till they showed him the Earth insignia on their armor. Then, with a cruel smile, he spoke in broken standard. We were paid to destroy you. Those words hit like a shockwave when they reached the command center. Keon demanded paid. By who? The Drexari coughed, blood on his sharp teeth. Your council. The ones you call allies. Before anyone could ask more, the alien spat a final phrase in his own language, and his body went limp. Ross stood frozen. The council's betrayal had just gone from political to deadly. They hadn't just cut Earth off, they had hired killers to wipe humanity out. By midday, the battle in orbit had reached its peak. The Martian sky was filled with falling wreckage, burning like streaks of fire as it entered the atmosphere. The defense batteries on the surface kept firing, but their ammunition was running low. Human ships fought desperately, holding the line, until reinforcements could arrive. Keon's voice came over the secure line to the President on Earth. We can't hold them forever. If you want Mars to survive, now's the time to send the Titans. Mara Ellison's reply was immediate. They're already on their way. Hold them, Keon. Hold them until we can crush them. As the sun dipped below the horizon of Mars, the surviving Drexler ships pulled back, leaving trails of debris and smoke in their wake. But the cost was brutal, thousands dead. Entire districts of New Olympus reduced to rubble. Orbital defenses crippled. Daniel Ross stood among the ruins, the smell of burnt metal thick in the air. He thought of the smirk he'd seen on the Drexari. Delegate at the council. That smile would be wiped away. Humanity had been attacked, bled, and humiliated. But now they had proof. Proof of betrayal. Proof that this war wasn't just survival, it was justice, and Earth's answer was coming. The Titans arrived without fanfare, slipping into Mars' orbit under the cover of darkness. Their black holes absorbed the faint light from the distant sun, making them look like vast shadows drifting through space. But the moment they powered up, the void came alive. Rows of railguns extended from their armored spines. Missile silos opened, and plasma batteries began to hum with deadly energy. The lead ship, Horizon, carried the scars of an older war, but now it had been reborn. Its weapons were upgraded, its shields thickened, its crew sharpened to a fine edge. Admiral Keon stood on its bridge, the red dust of Mars below, the stars beyond. His orders were simple. Strike back hard enough that the Drexari would feel it in their bones. The intelligence team had already identified a target, a Drexari border world called Vhalcor, used as a refueling and command hub for the fleet threatening Earth. From there, the Drexar had launched every raid on human space since the Council's betrayal. If Vhalcor fell, the Drexari's forward supply lines would be shattered. In the Horizon's war room, Daniel Ross joined Keon and the senior officers as a holomap of Vhalcor rotated in the air. "We hit them fast," Keon said. "Duh." No warning. No negotiations. "They've had their chance," Ross nodded. "Let them know Earth's answer is fire." The fleet moved out. 3 Titans, 15 cruisers, and over 40 smaller escort ships slipped into warp space. The trip took only hours, but for the crews it felt longer. Every soldier, every pilot knew this was more than a mission. It was the first human offensive against the Drexari in history. When they emerged from warp, the Vhalcor filled the viewports. It was a dark, rocky world wrapped in storm clouds, its surface scarred by centuries of mining. Orbital defense platforms floated above it, their heavy cannons already swiveling toward the human fleet. But the Titans didn't slow down. The first volley came from Horizon. A single railgun round, the size of a small car, punched through a Drexari station and split it in half. In seconds, the other Titans joined in, unleashing a storm of fire. Plasma bolts lit the darkness, missiles streaked across the void, and entire Drexari ships erupted in silent bursts of light. On the surface of Vhalcor, the shock waves from orbital impacts shook the ground. Drexari command centers went dark as power grids collapsed under the bombardment. Human dropships followed, diving through the atmosphere to deploy strike teams. Their mission, capture military databanks and extract whatever intelligence there is. Could find Ross rode with one of the drop teams, his pulse pounding as the craft sliced through thick clouds. They landed near a Drexari command spire, its black surface glistening with rain. The fight was immediate. Talion. Soldiers swarmed from hidden entrances, their rifles glowing with charged energy. The humans answered with rail rifles and grenade launchers, cutting through the defenders as they pushed toward the central control room. Inside, the databanks were massive pillars of humming crystal. The tech team moved fast, pulling files and copying encrypted logs. Then one of them froze, staring at the screen. "Admiral, you need to see this." Minutes later, Ross was standing over the terminal, his face hardening as the alien script translated into human language. It wasn't just battle plans, it was a full schedule for the destruction of Earth. Every attack was mapped out, from the first raids to the final strike on the homeworld. The date of the last assault was chilling. Less than 30 days away, Keons. The voice came over the comms. "Get that data to the fleet now. We need to plan for what's coming." Ross nodded and turned to the techs. "Pull everything, every file. Then wipe their systems clean." The humans withdrew under heavy fire. their dropships blasting back into orbit. Behind them, the Drexery spire collapsed under a Titan's final strike, vanishing into a cloud of molten debris. By the time the fleet pulled away from Vihelcor, the world was in ruins. Its orbital platforms were gone, its fleet destroyed, its surface command centers turned to craters. The Drexery had been hit harder than they'd expected. The message was clear. Humanity was not prey. On the horizon's bridge, Keon stood beside Ross as the stars stretched into warp lines. "They'll be coming for us now," Keon said. "Not just for Mars, not just for a station, this will be everything they've got." Ross looked out at the dark beyond. "Good. Then we'll give them everything we've got." Far away, in the shadowed chambers of the Drexery High Command, Warlord Victor listened to the reports. His claws tapped the armrest of his throne. As the images of Vihelcor's destruction played before him, slowly his lips curled into a smile not of victory, but of challenge. The next battle would decide more than just Mars or Earth. It would decide which race would survive the month. Ahead, the Grand Council chamber on Tarlis 9 was a place of elegance, power, and silence. Rows of alien delegates sat behind polished black desks, their eyes reflecting the glow of the central holoscreen. But today, the chamber vibrated with panic. News from the Outer Rim had arrived, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. The human fleet had struck first. Vihelcor, a key Drexery base, was destroyed in hours. Orbital platforms, command spires, and the surface military installations were obliterated. The holofeed showed fires burning across the planet, plumes of debris drifting into space, the remnants of the Drexery fleet scattering like frightened birds. Counselor Threx of the Vokar leaned forward, claws tapping nervously. This is impossible. Humans were supposed to be weak, divided, and slow. How did they strike with such speed and precision? Counselor Renell of the Zexery hissed, voice trembling. "It is the Titans. Those massive ships. We believe them ceremonial relic symbols of old wars, nothing more. Yet they have moved and destroyed an entire base in one strike." A holographic figure flickered into the chamber, the Drexery warlord Victor himself, speaking from the remnants of his command network. His black armor gleamed and his eyes burned with rage. "Humans are not what you believe," he said. "They're predators in disguise, and they will not stop." The chamber erupted. Voices shouted over one another, accusations flying across. Species lines. "We underestimated them." One delegate screamed. "They have proof of our betrayal," another cried. "They know we paid the Drexery to destroy them." The council secretary, an aged Sorlian named Triv, raised his clawed hands. "Order! Order!" But no one listened. Panic spread faster than logic. The realization hit them all. Earth had been attacked. Earth had fought back. Now Earth had the strength to threaten the entire balance of power. In a secure corner of the chamber, Counselor Elara of the human-allied Cresty species whispered to her assistant, "We cannot allow them to retaliate on a galactic scale. Humanity is proving too dangerous. We must contain them." But the whispers were drowned out by chaos. Delegates demanded emergency measures vetoing trade, calling military reinforcements, threatening sanctions. Some even suggested assassinating human leaders before they could strike again. Victor's message cut through the noise again. Do not underestimate them. Their fleet is small, but precise. Their Titans are unstoppable. They strike not for conquest, they strike for survival. And when they come for vengeance, you will have no place to hide. The room fell silent. The delegates could feel it, for the first time in recorded history. Humanity had not only survived the Council's machinations, they had turned the tables. Counselor Threx spoke quietly. "We cannot win against them. Not with fleets, not with armies, not with deceit." He looked around, hoping someone else would speak, would have a plan. No one did. Outside the chamber, the Council's warships scrambled. Commanders debated interception strategies, reinforcement routes, and emergency evacuations. But the human fleet was already on the move again. The holomap showed their trajectory toward the Drexery heart worlds and beyond, cutting through the outer defenses with terrifying speed. Meanwhile, on Earth. President Mara Ellison watched the Council's movements from a secure command room. The human media reported minimal details, keeping the public unaware of the full scope. But Mara knew the Council was panicking. And she knew one truth above all: humans would not stop until justice was served. Daniel Ross, standing beside her, leaned toward the hollow screen. "They're terrified," he said simply. "Every species on that council now realizes that betraying Earth was the worst decision they ever made." Mara nodded. "Good. Let them panic. Let them scramble. The more they lose control, the weaker they become." Keon's voice crackled over the coms from the Titans in deep space. "We're ready for the next strike. The Drexery are regrouping, but they won't have time to fortify their worlds before we hit them again." On Tarlis 9, the counselors tried to salvage what they could. Emergency sessions were called. Diplomatic envoys were sent. Fleets were redirected. Yet beneath all their schemes, a single truth loomed large. Humanity was no longer a minor player. In galactic politics, humanity was a reckoning, and the Council could feel it. Every calculated plan, every hidden conspiracy, every ancient treaty, they were meaningless against a race that refused to bow, refused to run, refused to be silenced. In the darkness of space, the human Titans powered up, their weapons gleaming. Like lightning in the void, Mars had been defended, Vahel core destroyed, and now the Council trembled. The first strike had been only the beginning. Humanity's answer had arrived, and it would not stop until the galaxy learned what it truly was, meant to provoke Earth. The silence of space was shattered by the Drexery war horns, long, low vibrations that rattled the hulls of the human fleet. Across the void, dozens of Drexery battle groups had rallied, moving faster than anyone expected. Their black ships gleamed, like shards of obsidian, engines roaring with deadly intent. Admiral Keon stood on the bridge of the horizon, staring at the approaching armada. "They've learned," he said quietly, almost to himself. "They've realized what we did at Vahel Korand. They're coming to make us pay." Daniel Ross tightened his grip on the railing. "They think numbers will save them. They don't understand humanity." The first wave hit an orbit over the asteroid belt near Drexari space. Explosions flared across the void as railguns clashed with plasma cannons. Smaller escort ships darted between massive warships, trading fire in deadly choreography. The Titans unleashed their full-power missiles, streaked like falling stars. Plasma beams carved paths through enemy hulls, and railgun rounds tore ships apart with terrifying precision. But the Drexery were relentless. Their fleet formations were disciplined, their attacks coordinated. For every ship destroyed, 2 more moved into position. Their strategy was clear: overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers and force them into retreat. On the horizon, Keon barked orders. "Target the lead frigates. Focus fire on the capital ships. Keep the Titans alive." The crew worked like a single organism, adjusting shields, reloading weapons, calculating trajectories. Amid the chaos, Ross watched as a Drexery frigate broke formation and surged toward a human transport carrying crucial supplies. "We can't let them hit that convoy," he shouted. Piloting a fighter, he led a squadron in a daring intercept, weaving through debris and enemy fire. The clash was brutal. Ships collided in explosions that lit the darkness like miniature suns. In the end, the convoy survived, but the human squadron was severely damaged. The battle raged for hours. Titans moved through enemy lines like unstoppable predators. But the Drexer adapted quickly, using asteroids for cover and striking from unexpected angles. Human losses mounted, and tension in the fleet reached a breaking point. Then, a transmission cut through the coms. It was the Drexery warlord Victor himself, his voice calm and cold. "Admiral Keon, you have fought well, but you cannot stop the tide. Your world will burn, your fleet will fall, and your people will kneel." Keon's jaw tightened. "You're wrong. Humanity does not kneel." He turned to the crew. "All batteries charged to maximum. Focus fire on the Drexery center cluster. We end this today." The Titans roared in response, unleashing an assault so intense that the Drexery formation shattered. Ships collided, shields failed, and the vacuum of space was littered with twisted metal. The center cluster, including several command vessels, exploded in brilliant fireballs. Victor's own flagship, a massive dreadnought, moved forward to rally his fleet. Ross saw it through the viewport, its dark hull, bristling with weapons. "That ship, it's massive," he muttered. "Can't take it head-on." Kian nodded grimly. "We don't have to. We'll use the Titan's hypercharge protocol. It's risky, but it's the only way to break them." In seconds, the Titans aligned, focusing all energy into concentrated beams. Hypercharged plasma lances shot forward, cutting through the dreadnought's armor like a knife through cloth. Victor's ship shuddered violently, its shields collapsing under the unrelenting assault. With a final, deafening explosion, it tore apart. Leaving the remaining Drexery forces in disarray, the counterattack had failed. The Drexery were retreating, their formations broken, their fleet crippled. But the victory came at a cost. Dozens of human ships had been lost, and the Titans themselves bore serious damage. Kian looked at the remnants of the battlefield. The silence after the storm, heavy and haunting. "They'll recover," he said quietly. "And they'll come back. So will we. And next time, we won't just defend. We'll end it." Ross stared at the stars, thinking of Earth, Mars, and the countless worlds the Council had betrayed. Humanity had survived betrayal, fire, and ruin. Now, they had sent a message to the galaxy: provoke Earth. And humanity's answer would be merciless. In the darkness, single transmission from Victor's surviving forces crackled through. "This is not over. Earth will fall." Humanity had already moved beyond fear. The Titans limped forward, carrying the warriors of a species that refused to bow. The next chapter of this war would not be written in whispers, it would be written in fire. And somewhere deep in the void, the Council shivered, realizing that the humans they had tried to betray were no longer just surviving. They were preparing to take everything back. The void was quiet. Too quiet. After the chaos of the Drexery counterattack, the human fleet drifted among the wreckage of shattered warships and drifting debris. Titans limped through space, scarred but alive, their weapons still humming with deadly energy. Humanity had survived. Humanity had struck back, but the war was far from over. Admiral Kian stood on the bridge of the horizon, his eyes fixed on the star map. The Drexery were retreating, but the Council, every species that had whispered betrayals, every race that had counted Earthweek was watching, waiting, unsure of what humanity would do next. Daniel Ross joined him, leaning on the railing. "Be silent for now," he said. "They've never seen humans like this. Not organized, not fierce, not unstoppable." Kian nodded slowly. "Silence doesn't mean peace. It means fear. And fear is a weapon." Earth's fleet, once scattered and uncoordinated, had become a precise instrument of war. From Mars to the outer colonies, humans had gathered every Titan, every cruiser, every capable pilot, and forged them into a force no one could ignore. The Council had underestimated them, and that mistake would echo across the galaxy forever. The first message from the Council arrived, a trembling transmission carried across hundreds of light years. Its tone was formal, combat hollow, strained. "Admiral Kian, humanity. We request negotiations." Kian turned to Ross, a hint of a smile on his face. "Negotiations? After everything they've done?" Ross shook his head. "They want a safe face? They're scared. For the first time, every species that mocked Earth knows what we can do." The next phase of the plan was already in motion. Target worlds were being neutralized, Drexery supply lines dismantled, and intelligence stations captured. Humanity was no longer defending. They were claiming the initiative. The message was clear: betray Earth. The consequences would be total. In the council chambers on Tarlis 9, delegates stared at the feeds of human victories, the destruction of fleets, the unstoppable advance of Titans. There were no cheers, no shouts of defiance, only silence. One by one, Species that had once plotted against humanity froze in their seats, unable to speak. For centuries, the Council had been the arbiter of power in the galaxy. Now, for the first time, they were powerless witnesses. Victor, the Drexery warlord, sent a final message, a bitter warning carried on encrypted channels. You may have won this day, humans, but the galaxy is vast. We will return. Voice echoed across the fleet's comes. Let them come. We will be ready. Humanity does not fear the galaxy. The galaxy fears humanity. The human fleet advanced toward the Council's core worlds, not to conquer, not to enslave, but to demonstrate power and resolve. Systems that had once whispered treachery now opened their gates, sent emissaries, and offered alliances. Had become the reckoning, the standard of strength, and no one dared oppose it. As the Titans moved through the void, Ross glanced at the stars, thinking of home. Mars, Earth, the outer colonies' worlds that had been on the brink of destruction. Now protected by human firepower, humanity had not only survived betrayal, but they had also rewritten the rules of the galaxy in the silence of the council chambers. The delegates finally spoke, but only in whispers. None dared look each other in the eyes. None dared question what they had witnessed. Humans had not just fought back, they had delivered a statement that needed no words. Provoke Earth. And the answer is total, undeniable, and merciless. On the horizon, Keon lowered his gaze from the viewport, watching distant suns glimmer. History will remember this, he said softly. Not as the day we fought, but as the day humanity proved that no betrayal goes unanswered. Ross nodded, feeling the weight of every battle, every loss, every victory. They will never forget, and neither will we. The fleet moved onward, into uncharted sectors, into the unknown. Humanity had survived betrayal, conquered fear, and silenced the galaxy not with words, but with fire, strategy, an unyielding will. And across the stars, the Grand Council sat in awe, in fear, and in silence. For the first time, no one spoke. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never provoke Earth. The Titans glimmered against the blackness of space, carrying with them the promise of humanity's future where betrayal met fire, and where Earth answered. Every challenge with strength beyond imagination, the silence of the Council was complete.